Hello everyone, this is Esteban Martinez from Green Loop. Today we have an exceptional invitee from the US. I'm gonna let her introduce herself, so Anjanette.
Hi, I'm Anjanette Green with A Greener Space, and I am originally from the United States, but I like to say I'm a global traveler, and so I have a home in Spain, and I am now traveling in Central and South America, looking at materials around the world and bringing my expertise to Green Loop and Green Loop's expertise to me.
So let's talk a little bit about your trip. What's your main purpose? Why are you looking in Latin America? What do you see the value in it?
I have sort of fallen in love with the materials that are available in this part of the world. I've been going back and forth between Europe, United States, Mexico, and now coming into South America and focusing on the bio-based materials that are in this region, because they hold a lot of secrets and values that I think need to be brought into a more contemporary audience of architecture and design. So I've been focusing on teams that are working with materials in ways that are both traditional and non-traditional, and hopefully bringing that information to a new audience of users who can think of dynamic ways of using these materials for what we need to solve the future of design, and hopefully address a lot of the problems that we're having with global warming, shortage of supplies, inequities in materials, and a whole host of other reasons why materials are so fascinating.
Okay. Now, I know this is too early in your trip, but let us know a little bit behind the scenes. What have you seen so far that grasps your attention, that you say, hey, this should be, this is worth spreading, you know?
It's been so interesting. I love this question because I think when I first started out and had an expectation of what I was going to find, it's been really different and dynamic in all the good ways. So here in South America, particularly in Colombia, I'm finding a lot of enthusiasm around traditional use of earth that's being compacted into bricks, earth that's being used for both structural as well as decorative design. And what's so intriguing about that is that theme is starting to propel itself in other countries. So I feel like, and I don't want to even call them brick. It's not brick. I see this theme of using earth as kind of a connection between all of these different countries that I've been going to. And that even goes all the way to Europe and how we're using earth in a new way. So that's really exciting. And one of the most compelling is the earth that's being used for a project right here, which I'm going to be talking to you further about later today. But it's a beautiful product, and I think it has so much potential.
Okay, well, I think that's from our end, but the way this is gonna go is that now Anjanette is gonna ask you a few questions for me regarding this brick. So, yeah.
So I think one of the things that's most compelling is the story behind how this material was discovered again. Tell me a little bit about this, like, I guess I'll call it a new discovery of something that was an old piece of knowledge.
It's so interesting because when we started with this project, which I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it in Instagram or wherever this video ends up, but at the end it was all about looking for ways to have a material that it has a low embodied carbon. First of all, it has to be sustainable. It should be like a closed loop or nearly closed loop material, and thus during this questioning, we ended up with this block, which is mostly like an adobe. It's stabilized a little bit with cement, but the coolest part of it, because at the end we are not only just on the side of saying the client, you should do this and that, but we are known for our technical side, our technical expertise, and our technical knowledge, and how we can support these ideas from a technical side, right? So even though this seems so romantic, because at the end it sounds romantic, you know, you're using the earth to put together a house. So we started asking these questions, and we found out there's no actual literature about this. There hasn't been any former testing of these materials during the last 40, 50 years. So during this research, I came up with this manual from the 60s, 50s, and 60s. It was from the University of New Mexico, which is weird how the world goes around. And yeah, I saw that they have already classified this material as and it's so weird. And I'm gonna be a little bit technical on this side, but nevertheless, hopefully someone in the audience will understand that. The thing is that if you look at it from the insulation properties, thermal insulation properties, call it the R value, right? The R value of this block is 2. You would say, it has no potential in terms of insulating properties. But you have to keep in mind that the molecule of these bricks have obviously the clay, but it has water. And since it has water in it, because you haven't cooked the adobe, it's just dried, but it remains, the molecule of water, it's still there. So the brick behaves, first, it's a living thing, so it breathes, and it can absorb moisture, release it, and it can change thermal properties as it goes on. But the other coolest part of it is that since it has water, actually the behavior of an R2 brick, which is probably in inches, I would say 5 inches, 4.5 inches, it behaves almost like an R6 or R8, which is so cool.
It's so crazy. And when you told me this, I mean, I have to jump back to this a little bit. The whole reason why when I put a call of action to our community in Latin America and Central America, Mexico, Caribe, I asked this question: who has an innovative material that's just helping them with their design? I had no idea it was going to be this mind-blowing kind of product that you're finding. And the irony, to me anyways, is that this material or the testing of it existed, but the knowledge was shelved in a library someplace from, 40 some years ago now or more.
60.
And so I find, this question for me, and you and I could probably wax on eternally about the amazing technical pieces, and maybe we'll have another video about the technical parts of this, R value and all kinds of things. But, and I know that your team has done a really amazing study comparing mineral fiber wool, glass fiber wool, all kinds of different insulations that are traditional in assemblies for building. But this brick is outperforming most of them. But what I'm sort of curious about is two things. For this project, again, we'll be careful not to name exactly where and who the client is for privacy reasons, but I always get asked the question about scalability. When we think of natural materials and adobe and these types of materials that are extracted, from the earth, usually you want to try to use that locally and use the materials from the excavation for the building.
Right.
Now, in this scenario, a lot of times when you're testing soil, the chemistry of the soil is not conducive for building in that environment. With this product, and I guess I'll call it ladrillos, right? But they're not really brick. It's pressed earth, right?
Yeah,
compressed earth.
Yeah.
Because brick makes you think that they're baked. These are not put in a kiln, they're not baked. So in this case, or what would you tell people who want to now adapt this for their projects? How much information or knowledge do they need to understand about soil chemistry from their site for the purposes of building in, let's say, Alaska or, some other, extreme climate? What kind of conditions to replicate do you have knowledge of at this point?
Okay, there are no actual manuals. And what is crazy, because you can do a workshop with them to figure out, okay, this is the way it builds. And for instance, for this particular project, so we contacted the manufacturer and he said, I have to test the clay of that area if it's possible to do it. And do you know how they actually conduct the testing?
I mean, I know a traditional soil sample, but I have a feeling that's not what you're going to tell me.
No. in their mouth.
Oh God.
And depending on the feeling in the mouth, they say, okay, this clay works. If it doesn't feel right, they're gonna say this doesn't work. It doesn't work. But then again, that's why it's so crazy. It's only a handful of people have this knowledge. It's gonna be lost forever if we don't do anything. That's why I think your job it's extraordinary in that sense.
Trying.
And try to spread the word and having people, because if you say, okay, how we can replicate this, you're gonna have to fight this guy and start testing the soil with their mouth to see if it works, which is insane, but that's the way it is. So that's the reality we're facing. And then again, we have talked a little bit about the obstacles of these materials, because here in Latin America, most people think that as it's a material for the poor guys, right? It's for the handmade. They don't have any resources. You should have something technological like a cooked brick, like a traditional or cement or whatever. It turns out it's I mean, this material, it's way better in terms of thermal, acoustical insulation. You have all these wonderful characteristics that are basically disregarded for so many times. And that's the whole purpose of it.
This topic, as you know, I love the mini mic. This topic, as you know, is really near and dear to me, and a theme, again, that carries over into almost every country that I've visited. And when I start talking about this topic and the larger issue, I'm finding more and more, and I think to go back to the first question you asked me, like, why am I here? What am I doing? More and more that I learn, and the more experience that I have over these, almost 4 years now, of really focusing on materials in local places and how do we bring them up to a level of scalable use that's ubiquitous. I think that it's not so much about a bio-based material anymore. It's always been shortcomings of the material. Wood is flammable and it deteriorates, or paja, which is straw, will mold, or there's a variety of performance reasons why people usually push down bio-based materials and elect to go a different avenue with more petroleum based products. And I think that what we forget often, or we conveniently remove from that conversation, is what you're talking about, which is, I'm coining this term and people feel free to use it. It's an embodied bias against bio-based materials.
Right.
Because from conversations from Mexico to Central America to here, I'm finding that the materials that are bio-based, they're considered lowly or humble or for poor people, or like that's a poor person's house from antiquity. I don't want that. So how is your team addressing that issue? Because it's an issue that will come up. You're using an pressed earth product. You're going to have an earth house. How is beautiful design solving this complex problem?
The key behind it is a good architecture. So we have an exceptional architectural team, and it's called Plan B. They're based in Antioquia, in Medellín. Shout out to them. But then again, because architectural, if you have a good architecture, then you're not going to care about the material. When they put together a good design, people are not going to even care about what it's made. If it looks good, by all means, go ahead. And I think that's the key out of it. So, and having said that, obviously having an architectural team that's on your side and said, hey, I want that, because they're going to have a lot of noise from different manufacturers saying, you're crazy, you're going to bring 3-4 guys excavating and doing the brick outside and putting it to dry underneath these tents just to build these. It's going to take forever. But if you have a client that it's aligned with this philosophy, because it's a philosophy, and you have an architectural side that see the beauty of it and can exploit because at the end these materials are not perfect, they have imperfections in itself. They have stains. They're sometimes they crumble a little bit, so their edges are not perfectly square, But that's the beauty of it. If you start realizing that this whole thing is part of this beauty, and you can align everything, then everything falls where it should be, you know? So it's having the right team and having an aligned team, and then things will flow as it should be.
Yeah. Right team and an aligned team.
Right.
It's a great little byline there. So I think for me, I'm excited to see what the timeline is going to look like for this. I'm excited to come back and hopefully jump onto the job site to see these bricks made in action. I know that the facility that makes them is right near Bogotá, where we are.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can show some images of the process in posts to come, or an overlay with this interview, so the folks out there can really see what we're talking about. But so happy again and pleased that you invited me to come to Colombia. It's been a really great experience, and I can't wait for everybody to see how amazing this project will be and a precedent for future projects.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.